Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for those of you that are joining us. I appreciate you, and I am so excited to have our all ladies version of the Lessons Learned for Military Transition. My name is Lori Norris. I'm your bilingual translator. I don't speak a foreign language. I speak the language of the U.S. military, and I use that skill to teach veterans how to effectively market themselves and leverage their military skills and experience as they look for their next career. So I'm the host of the Lessons Learned for Vets podcast. And I used to do this event, this Lessons Learned for Military Transition, live at Luke Air Force Base, because that's literally 2 miles away from me. You might hear some jets go over every once in a while, and that's okay. It's beautiful sound, but we're not doing it live anymore. And so I decided, why not bring this event to everyone? So we decided to live stream it. So I am joined today by 2 beautiful ladies that happen to be my friends and also happen to have been guests on the podcast, some of them more than once, Marina. and you know me as Kasie and I do things together for her organization. So I'm going to toss it to the ladies and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into our event. So Marina, tell us a little bit about you.
Tell you a little bit about me. Okay, so I am the founder and president of Military Women's Collective, and I'm also the West Coast Regional Director for 4Block. They are both nonprofits, and that is my industry that I love to be in because it is my purpose to give back and to be of service to others, especially those that are in the, transitioning military, mil spouse, that whole military community. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you, Marina. Kasie, welcome. Excited to see you.
Welcome. Yes, it's so great to be here. You guys are starting my day off so wonderfully. A little bit about myself. I'm an Army vet. I'm a military spouse, a working mom, and I transitioned out of the military back in 2016. I was a logistics officer and I wanted to pivot to marketing and communications. So I did a transition, a pivot, became a military spouse, mom, a lot of adjustments, a lot of transitions, and a lot of lessons learned. So I'm really excited to be here. And recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, I started a company called Sigma Forces, and I've been running that, and it's been such a blessing. And I love doing all of our collaborations. We're all community partners and force multiplying, and so I'm just really happy to be here.
I am excited to have both of you here. You're both doing great things in the community, and I'm excited to hear from you. I know we've all heard from you already on the podcast, but I know that there's so much more that you've learned even since we all sat down and talked on the podcast. And so, really, the purpose of the event is just to bring our top 3 lessons that we learned from military transition. I haven't lived the military transition. I've just been teaching it for, someone told me today, almost 20 years, which made me want to cry. But that's true. It's true. Let's just own it. I'm old. And so we're going to go through some of those today. But really, we want this to be an interactive session. So we can already see you guys in the comments. So please drop your comments in there, questions. If there's anything any of us can answer for you, that's what we're here for. And, you're across the bottom, you see the Lessons Learned for Vets podcast. If you haven't ever listened yet, so please check it out. It's on all the major podcast platforms. And I've got the website going across the bottom right now. So I'm going to start with my lesson, my biggest lesson. And, people are going to get sick of hearing this, but we're going to turn it into a water drinking game, that every time I say this word on the podcast, you have to drink water, because I say it a lot. And because we can't make it a drinking game. No, yeah. Oh, coffee. I like your mug, by the way. It's very funny. I need that one for my husband. So the biggest lesson I can tell you is the first most important step in your transition is figuring out your focus. You have to know where you're going before you can find your way there, right? So before you can navigate your way to your destination, you have to know what that destination is. And so you're going to hear probably even today us talk about how important it is to start early, to start well in advance of your end date, right? When your service ends. But the reason we tell you to start so early is because part of that months and months of process is you figuring out your focus. It's not something you can, not all of us can just pull out of the air and say, I want to be this. I don't know about you guys, but if you had told me this is what I would be doing when I was this age, I probably would have told you you're crazy and laughed at you. This isn't exactly where I expected to be in my life. And so it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do. The average adult changes careers, not jobs, careers between 7 and 9 times. And so when I say find your focus, I'm not telling you have to pick one thing and do it for the rest of your life. That's the beauty of being a civilian, right? So you can go and change and do different things, start amazing companies and have meteoric growth like Kasie, right? So it is, you can change, but you've got to know where you're going. The only way to effectively market your military skills, your education, your knowledge, your accomplishments is to have a focus in mind. And I often use the fishing example, which is not, this isn't the first time I've used this example, but the ocean's a big place. If you go out and fishing in the ocean and you have no idea what you're trying to catch, you're going to come back you're going to come back sunburned, maybe a little seasick, and you're going to be hungry because you didn't catch anything. Because if you don't have the right tackle, the right bait, if you don't go to the right part of the ocean, you're just going to wander around and not catch anything. And so that's a little bit what the job search feels like if you don't know what you're looking for, right? You're going to wander around and go, there's no jobs here. Just like you're going to wander around the ocean and say, there are no fish here. So know where you're headed so that you can figure out, like, what are the relevant transferable skills I can talk about on my resume, in my LinkedIn profile, in my interview. The only way you can know that is to know where you're going, right? I'm an aircraft mechanic. If I only talk about being an aircraft mechanic on my resume, everyone's going to think I want to be an aircraft mechanic in the future. But if in my heart I'm like, oh, I don't ever want to touch an airplane again unless it's flying me to Hawaii. If that's the way I feel, but all I write about is aviation maintenance on my resume, I'm never going to get anywhere different. And so you've got to know where you're going first. So I know I talk about it a lot, but the biggest mistake that I see in the military transition is that people have no idea where they want to go. And so it's very hard for them to get there. Right? Have you ever gone on a road trip and you just said, I don't know where we're going, we're just going? Well, you're going to get somewhere, but it may not necessarily be where you wanted to go, right? So that's my first lesson. So I threw it to Marina first last time. I'm going to go to Kasie first this time. So Kasie, wow us with your lesson.
Okay, so it kind of ties into yours, and I wrote a bunch of notes, a bunch of tips that I'm hoping we can cover today. So the first one is one we've talked about in the past, and then all of my other tips that I want to bring to the table today are ones we haven't talked about because I'm just realizing they're great tips, and I've learned it after our podcast, which we recorded like 2 years ago. I cannot believe that much time has gone by, but 2 years ago we recorded a podcast and we talked about FitFo. And if you don't know the acronym, I'm going to share it with you. The PG rated version of the acronym. So FITFO is, all right, well, let me back up. So when I was in the military, I was a logistics officer and a battalion logistics officer. And when I first stepped into the position, I was lieutenant at the time, which is pretty young for that position. I got promoted in the position to captain, but when I first started, I felt a little overwhelmed, and I would go to my leadership and ask questions, and my battalion commander would always just say, "Oh, just FITFO, just FITFO," and I'm like, "What does that mean?" And finally, someone told me it means figure it the out, and I was like, "Wow, okay, so that's." And I did. I did. I'm so happy that that's what that advice was given to me, because it pushed me to be even more resourceful, which was so necessary as a logistics officer, to become a little bit more independent and start thinking for myself. And like I said, being extremely resourceful before you go to your leadership, and ask for questions. Only go to your leadership with the solutions. And but the problem is, you don't have to FITFO in your career transition. And I think that's a hard lesson I had to learn, because that mindset was so I lived by it. I always figured everything out on my own. I did everything. I researched everything on my own. I didn't use mentors. I didn't use resources. I was just trying to accomplish my goals all by myself. And what I quickly learned when you're transitioning is that the power of mentorship, the power of not FITFOing, is so great. I mean, there are so many great organizations out there, Veterati, a number of great mentorship, American Corporate Partners. There's just so many mentorship platforms and resources, and you don't just have to select one. And I think that's a common misconception too, is we get tunnel vision. I can only use this one resource or this one mentor. No, you have to think of it like a buffet. And this was actually shared to me by Sean Welsh. He I think of him as a mentor too. And he shared with me that you have to think of your resources and your mentors as like a buffet. And you have your transition plate and you walk up to it and you're like, okay, this mentor knows about this. This organization can provide me this resource. And you just put everything on your plate, and then you have a full meal. You're fully prepared. And so you don't just have to put one thing on your plate. So you don't have to FITFO. Load up your plate with all of the resources, all of the mentors that you can fit on that plate, and don't FITFO. Just don't FITFO. Did I cover it all?
I think that's great. And I think that it's ingrained in you as a veteran, right? Like, you can figure anything out. Go, you can adapt, you can be flexible, but you've got to do it on your own, right? It's a point of pride, isn't it? That, like, I could do this. Like, look at all the things I did in my career. I can do this. And so I think that that's the biggest message that you share, Kasie, is that you don't have to do it by yourself, right? That there's no reason to do it by yourself. And I think that leaving the military and kind of leaving that sense of tribe and family and community, and then you go out and you're like, well, I got to figure this out on my own too. It's very isolating. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons that I even started this podcast in the first place, because, like, I often say, like, I think of the podcast as the like the curves ahead sign, right? So it's like, it doesn't change the fact that the road is curvy. It just warns you to slow down a little bit, right? And so the other reason is that I want people to know they're not the only ones going through this, right? If they hear Kasie and Marina and George and Fred all have the same issue, they're like, okay, I'm normal. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that feels like this. And I think when we're traveling like a really hard path, we feel like, oh, I gotta figure it out myself. And I just want people to know they don't have to do that. There are people like all of us that are on the show, that all of us that are here on this live stream today, that can help you. So
Yeah, and Lori, it ties into what you're talking about with finding your focus. It is really hard to clarify your goals, especially if you've never been in the civilian workforce. You've been so focused on what you do in your military career. You have tunnel vision. You've been so loyal and dedicated to this one MOS, this one job, this one community.
yep.
And trying to find your focus or your career goal, or pinpoint exactly what it is that you want to do once you leave the military, is really hard. And that's why you can't FITFO. That's why you have to find these resources and these mentors and talk to them about just talk to them. You can take career personality tests and just try to help find that focus.
I think something that I wanted to add on to both of yours what's that saying? To build upon? No, there's another saying that we say. How do we say it? I forgot. To piggyback, there we go.
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
piggyback on
piggyback.
what you're saying. Yeah. So both of you, absolutely, what you're saying. And here was a lesson learned, and I wish he was watching right now. I hope that he is, because I'm going to totally call him out. And actually another person too. So we called ourselves, M cubed. There was myself, all of our friends, Mary Kate, and then Lori also knows my friend Matt Brink. The three of us together became what I like to call transition buddies, because well, Matt ended up staying in the Navy a little longer, but all of us at the time thought we were getting out around the same time. And so we have this thing in the Navy, we call them sea lawyers. It's people that are still active duty in the military that think they know everything about everything, right? And if you're still active duty in the military, what do you know about transitioning out? Not a whole heck of a lot, right? Like probably nothing. Because you've never actually gone through that process. So I wanted to make sure that I had people with me that also were completely clueless as to what a transition was like, but somebody that I could bounce my ideas off of. Like Army barracks lawyers is
Yeah,
what
I saw that
called
comment.
them. Exactly.
Every branch has them.
Yeah, okay. If you're in the chat, drop each
What
branch.
do you call it? Yes.
Yeah,
We
what do
got
you call
Army
it?
and barracks lawyers. We got
We
sea
got sea
lawyers.
lawyers,
What do
which
the
I'm
Marines call them?
What do the Air Force?
Call them? Yep.
What does the Space Force say?
Oh my God. But you know what I mean? There's people that are trying to tell you, oh, you should do this, this, and this. But wait, you've never actually gotten out of the military yet. How are you telling me what I should be doing when you don't know either? And that was one thing that I really thought was so helpful. I mean, I called him and Mary Kate, they were my transition buddy or my battle buddy. We ended up calling each other battle buddies because it was really about, hey, I found this resource. Have you heard of this? Oh no, I haven't heard of that. You need to Lance Corporal network in the Marines. You guys I'm getting off a topic every time I look at the chat.
I'll look.
You know what but y'all, I know y'all know what I'm talking about. And that is a huge lesson learned for me, was not to just focus on what, maybe the career counselor was saying, to actually do some research on my own, and then have my friends be, my transition buddies, my battle buddies, be like this soundboard that I could be like, hey, I'm looking into this. What do you think of this? And then, Matt and Mary Kate would be like, okay, let me look this up. Oh, this sounds good. I've heard of a bunch of people talking about it. I think we should do this. And so that's how I ended up going through 4Block. That's how I ended up going through the Commit Foundation, through the Leader Transition Institute, through Reboot. They have a bunch of Reboot classes here in California and also in Virginia. And I think there's some in Missouri also, because, like Fort Leonard Wood and a couple of the Army bases are there. But those are resources that I used. Are we doing all three, or are we doing one?
We'll just do one at a time. Yeah, we'll do one at a time. Yeah.
I will pass.
Don't give us everything all at once, Marina. We want to spread out your expertise.
I get so excited.
Right? So, I think that you make some great points, right? And that you don't have to do it alone. But also know that everybody's transition is different, right? Everyone's focus is different. Everyone's priorities, values, their family situation is different. And don't feel like you have to follow the same path as someone who got out ahead of you, but also be open to listening to them, right? And so, be open to those new ideas. And, I think about how many times military service members are dropped into new locations, new career fields and jobs, new countries, uncertain situations, and how you adapted and figured it out every time, right? So you've done this sort of thing before. Approach your transition with the same mindset, right? I can figure it out. And I think that part of why you were able to figure it out in the past is that you had a checklist, right? You had like your operating instructions, if you will, your continuity books and all of those good things, right? But so you don't necessarily have that now, but you've got mentors. You've got people to talk to. You've got people that you can ask advice of. And so I think that's really important, is so be open to those mentors. You don't need to do it alone, just like you've said. The one thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about networking. And I know that you ladies will talk about networking too, but and some of us are experts in it in this room, not me, you too. And so it's really important that you start building your network before you need it. Right. So I want you to start creating a healthy, robust network that is very diverse. And it's not just military service members before you need that network. And then I want you to keep it healthy even after you land a job. I want you to keep it healthy because you never know what's going to happen, good or bad, right? And part of networking is giving back to that network, not just taking from it. So now once you land that role, you can be that person that turns around and lends the hand backwards. But start today building your network. And the best way that you can do that is LinkedIn, honestly. You're here watching this on LinkedIn. If you're listening to us on the podcast or on YouTube, get to LinkedIn if you're not there yet and build that LinkedIn network. You can connect with people. And I know you think, oh, they're not going to actually answer me. I had this, my daughter did this the other day. There's some famous artist that she wanted to ask a question about. And I was like, send a message. This is on Instagram. It's very different, right? She's like, they're not going to answer me. They have 600,000 followers. I'm like, what will happen if you don't do it, right? You won't hear from them. She sent a message and within 5 minutes they replied. Now, again, that's Instagram.
Yes.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I've told the story of General Petraeus reaching out to me here on LinkedIn to say, great work on the show. Like, how could General Petraeus even know I have a show? Well, guess what? He saw it on LinkedIn. And
That's
so
cool.
that to me, that still kind of blows my mind, honestly. But everybody is accessible here on the LinkedIn platform. So start building those connections and nurture those. I'm a big believer in quality of your network as opposed to quantity. But I think that you can have both. I think you can have a high quantity of quality network connections. So that's what I want you to focus on. Okay. So I'll toss it to you, Kasie.
I love what you said. Something similar happened to me with the networking. I actually stumbled upon a LinkedIn newsletter, and the author, and we'll get to this, will be part of my next tip. But while we're on the networking topic, um, you're so right. I reached out to the author of the LinkedIn newsletter. I found out that he had a book. I purchased his book. I started reading his book, and I was so moved by it. And even though he's, a CEO, he's an author, all of these accolades, I felt intimidated to reach out to him, but I had to let him know that his book had such an impact on me that I reached out to him, and he responded to me, and we ended up connecting on Zoom. We had a coffee chat. We meet probably every other week on coffee chats. Our businesses are partnering. Hopefully, we're working that out. And we're going to collaborate around his book where I'm like sharing it and reading it. And I just can't believe you have to be willing to put yourself out there because you just never know. Um, and yeah, I didn't start my LinkedIn page until years after I got out of the military. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
years. It's never too late. So if you've already transitioned, it's not too late. And it's never too early. Start your
Kasie, you didn't
leadership.
say his name.
Well, I was trying to save it for the next tip. Should I go ahead and go into the next tip?
Sure, let's go for it.
Or
Bring
do
it
you
in.
want to,
Yeah,
Marina, do you want
let's
to
do
talk
it.
about networking before we go there?
You know what? I'm just going to put his name in the chat because I knew who you were talking about, because he is also a former 4-block instructor. And now, as you know, the founder of the company that you're talking about, he actually comes back and is an employer partner of ours, with 4-block, which every time he comes and he always does the same one. It's called Telling Your Story, because he does such a phenomenal job. And that is a huge thing when you get out of the military. I notice when I was an instructor too, that we tend to focus on our accomplishments that we did in the military, like I did this and this, right? And that's what we want to show to the people on the outside, that when we're going into this new position. And great, it's awesome to have all these accolades, but they have to be translatable, transferable to the civilian world. Yes, I'm putting that in quotation marks because, oh, speaking of civilian world, do you know what today is?
No.
So, well, 2 years since I retired. So
I can't believe it.
tomorrow, I know, tomorrow is like, the 2-year mark of, hey, Marina's been out of the military, but like the 28th of February was like the last day I was in the Navy.
Why are we drinking water and coffee? We should be celebrating with champagne.
Because I don't drink other stuff. That's a whole different story. But yeah, it dawned on me today that, holy crap, I guess that's the word I was thinking of. Sugar honey iced tea, right? Kasie,
Yeah.
what we talked about earlier.
You got to put that out. We're coming up with all these acronyms. You need to put that one in the chat too.
Yes, sugar honey iced tea and
Maybe.
shiitake mushroom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my favorites. But holy cow, right? That it's actually been 2 years, and I hope that in those 2 years that I have been able to mentor. I mean, my whole reason, my whole focus, like you're talking about, I need to drink because I said it too. My whole focus, my purpose is what I call it, is to be of service to others. Everybody just drank. I love it. My whole purpose is to be of service to others, but it's especially those in the military community. Like I said, I mean, I did 24 years, right? It's a lifetime that I was in the Navy. And now for this second lifetime, right? I want to be able to give back, leave a legacy. I don't know. That's what I want to do for everyone.
That's really what networking is all about, right? Is that give and that take. And so, but if you go into it with the heart for giving, right? The heart for sharing, for mentoring, for helping others, it will transform everything that you do. So,
Yeah. And I want to say
100%.
something about that is that Marina, you and I are both veterati mentors.
Yes.
And mentorship is a two-way street. So
Oh,
I
100%.
like when we go into these mentorship calls, and you talked about it earlier too about giving back. Don't just take. You have to give back.
Mhm.
But it is such a mutually beneficial experience if you can
Absolutely.
be a good listener. So, we all three of us want to better the veteran community, better the military spouse community. We want to give back to the community. And a way that we can do that is by being really great listeners. And so when we are on these mentoring calls, or Lori, when you're interviewing a veteran that's sharing their lessons, we are good listeners. We can hear their struggles because, Marina, you got out 2 years ago. I got out almost 10
Mhm.
years ago. So for me, it's even more important that I'm a really great listener to the struggles that they're going through, because I think those
Yes.
challenges are going to evolve. And the further we get away from the military, we're going to have to start learning what are the new struggles, what are the new hurdles that they're facing so that we can continue to serve the community. And since I got out, there's more lessons that I'm learning. Actually, it doesn't stop. You don't it's not like once you land your civilian job, your transitions journey is over. You're always it almost always feels like you're transitioning in life. And that's when I found that books. Would it be okay to talk about that now?
Let's do it.
Okay. So my second tip was going to be about mindset, and this is one of the newer tips that I have never talked about before. So I think it'll be really great to talk about something we haven't preached for the past year. So something that I have found very resourceful goes back to that author that I stumbled across on LinkedIn and then purchased his book. His name is Ken Davenport. And like Marina mentioned, he worked at 4 Block. I think he might still, or IVMF. He is an instructor there, and he also is the
He also
founder and
does that.
CEO of Mission Edge.
Yep.
And so he's out there doing great things. And he wrote the book, The Stoic Transition. And I got his permission to read a little passage from The Stoic Transition because I think a lot about our going into our transition journey. And then even years later, we have to have a really strong mindset. And this book has really helped me to strengthen my mindset and have more resiliency, and also normalizing that transition is hard. We have to normalize that transition's tough. We have to normalize that there's a lot of uncertainty. Not everybody has it figured out. And if you can just normalize those things, you'll show yourself a lot more grace and you won't be as hard on yourself. Because go ahead, Marina. I see you.
Oh, girl, you know what I'm about to say. It's like my signature thing that I say all the time.
Oh,
That I
say
keep
it.
telling everyone I need to the trademark it. It's a roller coaster of emotion. It really is. Like, you are going through being happy about getting out and not having to wear the same clothes, but then the next minute you're like, oh crap, I need to buy a whole new wardrobe. And then, am I going to be able to have a career post-military? Am I going to lose my house? I mean, like, there's so much going on, and you're happy in one minute, you're freaked out the next, you're pissed off, you're sad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
And then since you built your network on LinkedIn, you're going to start seeing other people announce their jobs who retire. Like you had your battle buddy group, Marina. Maybe there was a time where you saw them making accomplishments ahead of you and you start feeling less about yourself. And you can only control the things that you can control. You can only worry about the things that you can control, and you can't worry about anything else. And you can't let that distract you, and you can't let that make you lose your focus. So let me just pull this up. This is a little excerpt, tiny excerpt from the Stoic Transition, written by Ken Davenport. So one, I want to read this little first entry so we all know what stoicism is. But then I want to tell you just what the chapters are so that you can get an idea of what's covered in the book, because even though it says a stoic transition, it's really just about life. So the chapter is titled Finding Your Inner Stoic, and I promise this will only take me like 60 seconds. So don't drop off. Stay on. This is actually when you should be joining. This is so good. Okay. Finding Your Inner Stoic, ancient wisdom for the modern world. I can't think of a better way to discover who you are than through the teachings and practice of Stoicism. It may seem strange to turn to a 2,000-year-old philosophy to help with the modern challenges of life and transition, but in many ways, that's the point. What's old is new again, and what's new is often actually very old. Life was different in the year 100 AD, but it was no less complex and challenging. Pause. This goes back to the transition challenges being different. The human condition hasn't really changed all that much, even if the tools we use have. So, what is Stoicism? Don't let the name fool you. Stoic does not mean steadfast or emotionless. To the contrary, Stoicism is a tool in the pursuit of a great and meaningful life, not one devoid of joy and emotion. In fact, practicing Stoics are arguably more in touch with their emotions, not less. The foundation of Stoicism is built on the idea that a great life requires acting with virtue, with an eye toward a higher good, which will lead to more fulfillment, less pain, and greater happiness. There are 4 Stoic virtues: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. And then the last few sentences: Stoic virtues are about how you react to what life presents to you and how you process and channel your emotions and feelings in response. This premise makes an important assumption that your reaction to life's challenges and opportunities is uniquely yours. Glass half full or half empty, you decide. Offended by a perceived slight, it's up to you. Want to quit because you didn't get the promotion you think you deserved? It's your choice. You own your reaction and the consequences of your choices.
Love it.
And then just some of the chapters. Well, he has them out. The chapters are called rules. So here are the rules. Find your why. Your past is present. You are your network. Focus on what you can control. Perception is your superpower. Leaders are readers. Do the work. Failure is a gift, and love your fate.
I
Sounds
love
like
the
a book
perfect
I need
one.
to go get.
I love, like, if you want me to have him sign it for you, please just tell me. I will,
Yes.
because he's here in California, in San
Yeah.
Diego.
It's so funny because I was going through something the other day and we were on Zoom and I was like, gosh, this book is just so great. And he's like, well, you have direct access to the author, so just call me anytime. And he's just so approachable. And that's the thing with
He
networking
really is.
is you just have to reach out. You have to reach out. You can't assume that someone won't respond. And you can only
Exactly.
control what you can control.
I
I
think
love
it's
that.
so important to think about our mindset as you approach a situation like this. As we approach transition, we can say, I'm so scared and overwhelmed. Or we can say, I am so excited for the opportunities that are coming my way. And I can't wait to figure out how I'm going to navigate this path, right? It's all about how we approach it, the
Right.
mindset, the attitude with which we approach it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I find myself like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. But then I have to stop and say, but I'm really thankful for all of the things that I have going on
Yes.
positively in my life. Right. And so I think it's sometimes we just have to like take a step back and go, wait a minute, am I approaching this with the right mindset? And I really like that passage that you read. And sounds like not only a book that I need to read, but maybe a person that I need to have a conversation with too. So,
Well, the next time you're in California, you should just say something, and we'll go and we'll meet up with Ken down in San Diego.
that's
Yeah. And
another
I was going to
conversation.
say too, like I have an example of this where I wish I would have had this perspective because over my journey, my transition journey, there's been times where I've been unemployed, underemployed, and I've always been underpaid. And there's been times where I've been overlooked for a promotion or I didn't get the job that I wanted. And I really beat myself up over that. And it's so funny because looking back now, some things didn't work out, but better things came. And it was like, you just have to trust that things that are happening, it's okay. Better things are coming, more doors are opening, and it's just all a mindset game. And you cannot lose your focus, you cannot lose your motivation, and you just can't be hard on yourself. You have to give yourself grace.
And then also the imposter syndrome, like we talk about it so much. And I think it's us, shooting ourselves in the foot. Really, is what imposter syndrome, like what you're saying, Kasie, is that we make our own, like we make our own fate. Really, we're based on what he's saying in the book is that you choose how to react to what is happening to you. And it's your choice to be like, or okay, let me think about this. Um, yeah, it's a powerful thing. And what you were talking about with changing mindset, I had put some resources in the chat for, not only Ken's book, but also, that those three that I mentioned earlier are really, really helpful in not only changing mindset, but with what Lori said about focus, for me, I call it purpose. Figuring
Yeah.
out, because when you figure out what your purpose is, I kid you not, I did. So some people know about this thing called Gallup Strengths, where you can go and there's 34 traits or strengths that every person has, but the main ones that you want to focus on are your top five. And I noticed that once I figured out what my purpose was, that one of my strengths actually evolved into something different that basically said, you now have a sense of purpose. It's called the strength is called belief. And it's because I have this actual purpose, and it's something that I need to focus on. There we go with the word again. Here.
Jesus.
Told you, it's a good thing it's not alcohol. That's why we use water.
Trying not to choke. But that whole, some people call it passion instead of purpose. But once you figured out, and how do you find that? Okay, some of those resources that we talked about, but also what feeds your soul? What, if we're going to talk feeding your soul or things like that, think about maybe a few years ago we had Marie Kondo, where she was talking about sparking joy, right, with different clothing and things. That's how I feel like when I'm doing something that aligns with my purpose. It sparks joy. It feeds my soul. It
Mhm.
makes me happy. Like I went and assisted another nonprofit founder with feeding the homeless this past Monday for President's Day, and my heart was just so full because I felt like I was making a difference, and I think that's what we all want, is to just make a difference and have that purpose post military, because when you're active duty in the military, you have tons of purpose. Your purpose is to protect the US and its assets, resources, etc. And once you're out of the military, I think that's where a lot of people struggle. They lose that sense
Yeah.
of purpose, and they lose that camaraderie. And so if I'm going to do my third lesson learned, because I think I just did third, but so I'm on 4 now. I think.
Who knows?
You brought more than 3. I'm so
I
sorry.
brought many. But one of the things that I think my lesson learned is to make sure that you stay connected with the community in some way. Be that going to school and being a student veteran, part of the Student Veterans of America, or Warrior Scholar Project, they assist, or Service to School, any of those that are helping you with schooling, like Boots to Books as well. Or do something where you're giving back to the community, like Team Rubicon, Team Red, White, and Blue, Mission Continues. All of these resources are ones that where you're going to be able to be around people that understand you, that can, if you're feeling some kind of way, you can say something to someone and be like, hey, I'm feeling this, hey sis, or hey bro, I understand what you're going through because I went through the same thing and this is what I did. Having that camaraderie. Oh, I'm going to start crying. Having that camaraderie, I think, and that sense of purpose as well, will help us to not have the 22, or what's probably more like 44, that we lose all the time. Because when you have that sense of purpose and that sense of camaraderie, you have people you can rely on and you don't feel so lonely.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I mean?
us in our group chat just yesterday
Yes.
was a great example of
Oh, 100%.
camaraderie, and we were just chatting openly and supporting one another, and it was really helpful. Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, and it is really important, and um, I don't even know what tip I'm on either. but I have something I want to say. I don't know if it's a tip I've already said or if I don't know, but it
Please
kind of
go for
ties
it.
into what Marina was saying with purpose. I finally feel like, not finally, I have found purpose since I've left the military, but I feel extremely satisfied where I'm at professionally. Like I feel like I finally figured it out. I don't feel like I'm working, and I'm working way more than I've ever worked in my entire life. The amount of hours I'm putting into my business, I can't it's pretty much all I've done the last few months is just work tirelessly to do this, but it doesn't feel like work. I feel like I found my passion. But you want to know what? 4, 5 months ago, what happened was, and this is where stoic mindset comes into place, and I just learned how to figure this out, but um, I finally feel like I figured out how to optimize my LinkedIn. I figured out how to kind of overcome all of these unemployment hurdles and barriers to employment through LinkedIn optimization, mentorship. I finally, 10 years later, I finally figured out the recipe to make myself competitive and employable and to earn a salary that is comparable to my work and experience. And I got to the point where I had job offers, 2 job offers on the table with very large companies. And I was weighing those options out. And this was back in November, so very recently. And I was feeling so optimistic. I'm like, yes, I cracked the code. It only took me 10 years, but here I am. I'm weighing these job offers. I'm going to triple my salary. I'm doing it. And then the first company I woke up, LinkedIn was talking about everyone getting laid off from that company. The hiring manager was let go. The recruiter was let go. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to the other company. This makes the decision a lot easier. And so I was reviewing the offer. They were let go too. And in that moment, I felt extremely discouraged because it had taken years. But looking back at this book, which helped me kind of mentally overcome this and stay focused, because I had 2 options. I can either dwell and beat myself up about this and not take action and move forward, or I can regroup and do something about it. So I did. I started my own company. I was like, "You know what? I just have to this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start my own company doing what I love." And it was like a blessing, like we talked about earlier. Sometimes doors shut for a reason. And I feel like because I had a good mindset and I just picked myself up, I mean, the next day I started building my website. The next day, as soon as I just picked up and I was like, "Well, those 2 careers aren't gonna work out. This is what's gonna have to happen. I'm gonna have to start my own job, a job for myself. I'm gonna have to make myself employable, and it's gonna have to happen this way." And that's why these things keep happening. It's because fate or whatever is pushing me to do this. And now it feels so right. I feel like I have passion. I could cry thinking about when people message me and say 2 people this week messaged me and landed jobs that have gone through our programming, and not saying Sigma Forces is the only reason they got their job. It was a combination. They filled their plate up with all of the mentors and all of the resources. They had their plate full. Sigma Forces happened to be an item on their plate. And I'm just so happy to be on that plate. And yeah,
That's
I'm going to
great.
drink some coffee.
I think that we've talked about purpose, we've talked about passion, we've talked about finding fulfillment. And I think there may be some people out there like, yeah, that's great, but I have a family to feed. Like, that's great. You started a business, but I need money tomorrow to pay my mortgage, right? And so I want you to know that, like, purpose, passion, like filling that need that you might have inside, it doesn't have to be from your work. It's great when it all aligns. And, maybe you do have to get money coming in tomorrow. And just know that when you do land a job, it doesn't have to be forever. Like, sometimes we take a role, we do something because we do have bills to pay. And we find other ways, like a podcast that doesn't make us any money and that only costs us money, to give back to something and to really pour our heart into something. And so I think that I love that both of you ladies have found something that is, paying you what you need to be paid and filling that need. But for those of you that are listening saying, yeah, that's great, but I got to keep a roof over my family's head, know that sometimes you will have a job that is just a temporary position.
Very
But
true.
like,
Oh, I didn't say I'm making any money.
yeah,
No one
we
makes
don't
it.
have to
I
dig
only
into
make money for one of my two.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
just
was gonna say
one.
I don't take a paycheck, so all the profit goes into our scholarships. But I have side jobs and like little freelance gigs that are my income. But my company was a portfolio of my
Mhm.
work almost, and
Yeah.
so it's actually brought more freelance and gig projects, and I was able to increase my hourly wage for the other companies that I do branding and stuff for. So you just
Nice.
never know how things will play out. You just never know. And I do feel really fulfilled because I only have to do a couple of hours of that to have my income. And
Right.
I get to do this passion project. But you're right. And that's a lot of weight to carry. So finding balance between your passion and how you're gonna earn a living is a tough
So
balance
you
And
do
sometimes.
you're so right,
your
Lori,
volunteer work,
too.
right? I mean, go do it in volunteer work. And
Exactly. That's what I
like you
was going to
said,
say.
stay connected, right? So you stay connected with the community, give back, fill your cup in that way while you're earning the money that you need to feed your family over here. And then, like Kasie said, don't lose sight of it. Don't lose focus of where you want to go someday. And just like you, Kasie, like you said, it's not paying my bills yet, but I think you've got a structure in place that it's going to be successful. And I believe 100% in you and that you will be successful even with all the obstacles that you faced, because you have done amazing things already in just a few months.
Definitely.
And so I think it's just you have to stay focused and like have that goal in mind and move forward and just know that there are so many people that are available to help you. And I think that's the most important thing about any of this, right?
Yeah, and what you were saying about volunteering, I gave some different more well-known I mean, I didn't even mention like Wounded Warrior Project or there's so many, but here's the other thing, yes, you can volunteer for some of these huge, multi-million dollar nonprofits, but then there's also those smaller ones,
Mm-hmm.
local nonprofits that really need your help. And whether it's monetary or whether it's just donating your time to assist with any kind of event or something that they're doing, that's something that I recommend looking into first before looking into the really big ones.
Yeah.
Um, because you'll actually be helping your home community vice, just the
Yeah.
nationwide.
And we'll tell you that tomorrow's episode is going to feature Jordana McGonigal, just a little insight and highlight for you. And she's coming on to talk about purpose and how purpose is not woo woo, it's science. It is proven science that doing something that fills your purpose is critical to your success and your wellness. And so I invite you to tune into that. It'll be dropping tonight at midnight Eastern, and check it out. I would love to get a little bit more information from you, Kasie, about Sigma Forces, and from you, Marina, about Military Women's Collective before we wrap up today. So, Kasie, would you share with us a little bit more about Sigma Forces?
Sure. So Sigma Forces, we are a career advancement organization. So we offer professional education and certifications in Lean Six Sigma, Six Sigma, Scrum, a lot of marketing, which is my favorite, and sales. And will soon add PMP to the mix, which is really, really exciting. And so people can come to us whether they're transitioning from the military in a year, never going to transition, they've already transitioned, they're a military spouse, even civilians. You come, you can upskill. We have 7 free courses, and then we do have courses that that cost money, and you can apply for a scholarship to cover the cost for those. So you come, you upskill, Then you can do mentorship, and Lori is a group mentor. She helps us out with our resume, and she does a fantastic job. And we have several group mentors, and Marina's one too. Of course, we all support each other's organizations. So, and Marina helps with the LinkedIn optimization, and so we have really great workshop leaders and group mentors for mentorship and career readiness, preparedness. And then we are partnering with an employer partner. So very soon, in the next couple of weeks, we'll also have a job board on our website. So the ultimate goal is people come to our organization, they upskill, they learn career readiness through our group mentors, and then they can apply for jobs, become more employable. And so far, it has been such an amazing mission to be a part of. And I'm really optimistic about our future. And it feels really good to give back to the community.
Love it. Thank you. Kasie, will you put in the comments the website where they can find you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Marina, tell us about Military Women's Collective.
Alrighty then. Okay, so Military Women's Collective, we kind of were twofold. We empower homeless and food insecure women veterans by providing hygiene products and groceries, and then also ensuring that they receive relevant resources to help them become employed and to find permanent housing. And then also we coach and mentor transitioning or women that are transitioning out of the military, to make sure that they get connected with other women veterans, and so that they can find community and also find a purpose-filled and meaningful post-military career. It's about empowering. Yeah, so glad you've gotten on. Yes, Jen. We are all about the ladies' empowerment here. I mean, that's actually, if you look at my vision for Military Women's Collective, it's to provide a place for military women and to feel visible and heard. And what women stands for is warriors offering networking, women. I can't speak English. Warriors obviously offering mentorship, empowerment, and networking. Yep, to support one another. So yeah, that's
great. And here is your website.
That is
and we're just going to end with John's comment about how much you ladies rock. I really appreciate you two. You are my friends. You are both my mentors. You are my collaborators. I appreciate you two ladies more than you will know. I'm still looking at a smiley face balloon that Kasie sent me like a month ago. It's still sitting here on my desk next to me. It makes me smile every time I look at it. So thank you, ladies, for bringing part of the show today and for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with everybody that tuned in. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.